I am cautious to say that The Young and the Restless is improving because the fact is that for the first time in a long time, this show is actually trying to have storylines and actually trying to have drama. So I'm not completely convinced that it won't all fall apart and all the drama will be cut early and we'll go back to nothing really happening. But the fact that the show is actually trying means that this was probably the best month of Young and the Restless, certainly since I started doing these rankings. But in a very long time, even beyond this fall when I started doing the month of March was the best month for YNR. This puts The Young and the Restless at number 7 in my rankings, the highest it has been since I started doing this. And let's really break down why. I mean, it's because there is some actual storylines going on, even if I don't like one of them. And the one I don't like is what I've talked about last month, the fact that they're killing off Chemo, which I did not like. Maybe he'll still be alive. I doubt it, though, because there's a history there with the Chemo character that's very odd that I don't think Peter Bergman ever actually liked the story. But we do have Jack's niece, Allie, played by Kelsey Wang, and I think she's doing a good job coming into this show. Good to see representation for more Asian characters in American soap operas, which we've barely seen over time. But what this has led to, even though I don't like the fact that they had to kill off Chemo to get to this point, we get this interesting but odd thing that Diane is alive. Jack's ex, Diane, is alive, and she's now involved in this story with Ellie. Diane, when she was played by Mara West on YNR years back, was killed off. We saw her body floating, or at least it was found. Her body was found floating. So it's interesting because as much as most American soap operas bring people back from the dead, Young and the Restless has not done that often at all. So it's interesting that they decided to do this with Diane, and I don't think anybody is going to need a lot of convincing by the writing for them to explain why or how Diane is alive. But she is, and it actually adds some drama to the show because they don't do this often, and because Diane can be a very dramatic character when written well, which will she be written well? I don't know. So yeah, I hate the fact that they had to kill off Chemo for this story, but Diane being alive is something. It's something for the show to give us any kind of storyline. The main story, though, has been Ashlyn versus Victor. Victoria made Ashlyn the co-CEO of Newman Locke, but Victor has been trying to find out what Ashlyn has really been hiding, and the fact that Ashlyn just lied about his cancer and just had this web of lies regarding his cancer, all with one goal: to become CEO of Newman. And Victoria falling for all that. Victor, of course, tells Nick and Adam, and Nick was right all along because Nick had been pushing that Ashlyn just had this dark past and was lying to Victoria and tried to get Victoria to see this. He failed to do so. So this has been the main story. I liked the beginning and middle more so than these last few episodes of YNR with this story, because I liked that Victor had somebody new to go against that wasn't Jack, but in typical Victor and YNR fashion, Victor just always gets the upper hand, and then the story eventually becomes boring, and we're getting to that boring part of the story. Plus, I see a lot of speculation that Ashlyn will be killed off, which is why I am so cautious to say Young and the Restless is improving. Because if they make the same mistake they just made by killing off Chemo and like cutting drama out of that potential storyline, we're just going to lose Ashlyn and cut potential drama out of the whole show. So if they do that, expect Y&R to just fall back down, because Ashlyn is a character that is fresh for the show. The show needs a fresh villain, and I think Ashlyn can be that. Even if Victor's just gonna always get the upper hand, that part's stupid, but at least they can build Ashlyn back up after this. If they had a decent writer, they could do that anyway. There's the whole Nate part of the story. It doesn't look good for Nate that he's this doctor and didn't even realize that Ashlyn wasn't going to chemo, although Nate wasn't Ashlyn's primary doctor. I think he was just a consultant. So that explains that at least. But they've all come to Victoria to tell her that Ashlyn was lying about his cancer, and she won't believe it. And then he's just like disappointed that she won't believe him and just leaves. I hated that scene. But the last couple episodes, we see him trying to manipulate Victoria back into his good graces, upsetting Billy and Nick and Victor. So we'll see where this goes. Hopefully it doesn't kill off Ashlyn. I think they, at most, need to just build him back up. Because we know Victor's going to get the upper hand, and that he's going to be forced out of Newman some way. But hopefully that force out doesn't mean his death, because I think that is certainly the worst direction to go for the story and the worst direction to go for the show. They need a villain like Ashlyn to go against some of, not just the Newmans, even others. Ashlyn is a fresh take, and Robert Newman is doing a great job on the show. So losing him, I think, would hurt the show overall. I would have to cut it back in my rankings. Now, the rest of the show are a bunch of non-stories, because, like, Billy's podcast, we're getting nothing from that. I don't know what we're supposed to get out of the story. I think Y&R thinks this is, like, this really good character-driven story of Billy's podcast, and we could, like, go in depth into what Billy's thinking about, but it's boring. It's 2021 Y&R. That was extremely boring. That's Billy's podcast. We had Chelsea dreaming about Ray and them getting close, even though that doesn't really work. It's bad enough they're friends, but for them to try and push them as a couple wouldn't work, because there was a time when Chelsea tried to kill him. But spoiler alert, so fast forward this part or pause or click off the video, because doesn't seem like Ray will be sticking around, so I don't think anything will come of this, and then Sharon will move on from Ray, which is probably needed. And then lastly, I just have the fact that there's the Michael Lauren in part of the story where Michael's off doing this work for Victor. He came back to town to tell Victor some of his info, and they're keeping a lot of that from Lauren, who's been worried about Michael, of course. It was a little addition to the story. But overall, we got some decent Newman drama, even though I think the Newmans are extremely played out as it is. But this was a good month for the show, because we actually got some drama, and we actually had a little bit of storytelling. Not as big on the chemo story, but we'll see where they go with Diane. I don't have a lot of faith in the writing with Diane, though, so who knows? But for now, 7 is the highest Young and the Restless has been in the 6 months I've been doing this. It is the highest rated American soap opera on this list now. But it's a sad state of affairs for American soap operas in my rankings, because as you see, all 4 of them are at the bottom with 1 British soap opera. And then the other 6 on the top are 2 Australian soap operas, 3 British soap operas, and 1 New Zealand soap opera. So the American soap opera is falling off in my rankings altogether. They've mostly been down, but Bold and the Beautiful used to be up. Now it's Young and the Restless, that's the highest. Hopefully Y&R keeps momentum, doesn't lose steam like its sister show, Bold and the Beautiful. Because I'm just glad they're starting to tell some stories, but I can easily see them cutting out all the drama, going back to the ho-hum nothing's going on that we just saw for the entire year of 2021 and probably 2020.